My name's Rob Wickings. I've been working in post-production since 1991. I moved into Telecine as what would now be referred to as a colourist in 1993. I started off as a junior in that department, gradually worked my way up, and I've been working for the same group pretty much ever since. Post-production has obviously changed an awful lot over the past 20 years. When I first started, film for projection was still the major way of watching films in good quality. I'd be taking prints that were designed for projection and transferring them into distribution masters that could be transferred onto VHS for the home market. Now that just doesn't exist anymore. Now that we're into the whole era of the digital intermediate, where the look can basically go from the rushes and be manipulated all the way up the line. You're looking at something like the Coen brothers with Oh Brother Where Art Thou, where that suddenly changed and they could actually apply a look that wasn't just photochemical anymore. They could do things digitally. Whereas photochemical, you can do an awful lot, but it needs to be it's more broad strokes, I guess is what I'm trying to say. You can get absolutely stunning images out of that, which is proven by the fact that we've got 100 years worth of cinema and an awful lot of absolutely gorgeous looking film out of that. That process clearly works, but directors obviously want more control, and that's kind of where the whole digital intermediate thing came out from. What you can do now, of course, is deliver cinema quality images from a telecine, which is what you which is certainly what you couldn't do 10 years ago, where you would have been working very much in either broadcast standard or to kind of a faux HD. Data has become pretty much the standard now, whereas again 5-6 years ago I was doing everything onto tape. I can't remember the last time I physically touched a piece of broadcast standard tape, HD Cam SR or anything like that. It's all data now. Obviously, with that in mind, the telecines themselves have changed over time as we've moved up the quality threshold. So whereas when I first started I was using machines that were just designed to be broadcast quality, now the machines I use on a daily basis can be at least at HD quality and often into the sort of 2K and into the 4K realm. So you're looking at stuff that where what I can generate out of the back of the machines would be considered to be cinema quality. So I'm using machines like Spirit Telecine, Spirit 2K, Spirit 4Ks, which are almost tantamount to film scanners these days. You can put up a piece of, say, 16mm film and you can scan it to a resolution that would be very close or possibly even greater than the resolution on the actual film. So that's been a major change, obviously, the fact that the equipment is able to capture so much more closely the dynamic range and the grain structure and the colour balance of the material that we're asked to reproduce. Digital restoration is obviously a big part of what I do in my daily life, and the tools for that have become incredibly sophisticated over the past 10 years, to the point now where it's very easy to do up to 4K restoration on old black and white features and make them look pretty much flawless. That's part of the fun of it, really, the fact that you can get different disparate elements of a feature, say some neg, some print, some interneg, and make a cohesive and pleasing whole. My weapons of choice are Spirit Telecines. We have 3 suites that still run film. I run a Spirit Classic that's got what's called a yo-yo attached to it that basically takes a data feed out very early in the electronic chain, so it grabs very, very high quality images. We also have a Spirit 4K, which is widely regarded as the best Telecine machine that was ever made. It's kind of the pinnacle of its kind. After that, you're moving on to things like ARRI scanners and things like that. Basically, you'd be working probably off a log scan, or more likely an improved version of a log scan. The whole notion of log capture, which is what a lot of digital cameras do these days, gives you an image that basically captures the full range, but it means it's an image with very little contrast to it. And then from there you would fix contrast, you dust bust, you can paint out splices, fix movement, judder. If I'm scanning a piece of film and there's a hop, it could be some glue on a previous frame. It can be as simple as physically cleaning off that frame, rerunning it, and then all of a sudden that hop isn't there anymore. It's an old school response to something that would be a major pain to fix electronically. So there's all sorts of disciplines that come into play when you're looking at film restoration, and that's an incredible thing to be a part of. You have to start knowing the fundamentals of colour, otherwise you're just not going to get anywhere. But I'm a great believer in letting people have the tools to be able to do the job. But at the same time, if you don't understand what happens when you're crushing blacks, or when you're bringing up highlights, when you're putting a colour bias in that you might maybe not want, you need to understand the fundamentals. So that's the very, very important thing. There's new software coming up all the time, but they all have the same basic functionality, and that ties into the fundamentals of colour manipulation. You need to have that down before you sit down and start grading. The basic, how you get a well-balanced image in the first place, and look at that before you start thinking about, I'm going to be a Resolve colorist, or I'm going to be a new Decoded colorist, or I'm going to be a commercials colorist, or a features colorist, or whatever. There's a lot to be said for finding inspiration outside of the suite. Just open yourself up to new influences as well. I think art is very, very important as well, definitely. If you're going to be developing looks, why not go back to the old masters, and why not take inspiration from them? Certainly what you find as a colorist is that you'll get clients walking into a room with a mood board, and they'll have an idea of what they want something to look like, and that will be taken from magazines, it will be taken from art books, whatever, other pieces of film. Obviously, film will always eat itself, so you're always going to get people that say, I want this to look like Terrence Malick, I want it to look like Douglas Sirk, I want it to look like 3-strip Technicolor, I want it to look like F.W. Murnau. So nothing sits alone, everything's influenced by everything else. I've always considered that if you feel that you know everything, you've basically run into a brick wall. You need to be innovating, you need to be thinking about what you're going to be doing next. The trade itself is changing year on year, month on month. Sometimes there's always new kit available, there are always new cameras out there, there's always new software. Things are constantly becoming cheaper, more accessible to people. It's just about keeping an open mind, being open to new influences, new technology. You might find that there's another tool in that piece of software that will radically change the way you work prior to a shoot. It's very, very useful for a director and a DOP to meet with the colorist. There's a great history of colorists being invited onto set to either view what's going on, or for DOPs to take them through a particular lighting setup, so they can kind of develop a look if they need to, or they can say, we want to do this, is this going to cause us a problem? So that dialogue is very, very important. There have been certain colorists that have, on the back of that process, actually got credits at the front of the movie as opposed to the back, which shows how important a colorist can be. And certainly what I saw sort of five years ago, and you're still getting an element of it today, is a a log image that goes directly into the nonlinear editor, into your Avids or your Final Cut Pros or whatever. And editors cut with that down the line, and they get used to the way that looks. So when it goes to a colorist, and the colorist instantly does what I call colorist wrists. You take the blacks and you bring the blacks down, and you take the whites and you bring the whites up. The colorist went to give it more contrast, make it more pleasing, and the editors were just like, "What are you doing? You know, we like it like that." What they actually mean is they've got used to it like that. But it did mean that certainly 5-6 years ago, you saw an awful lot of stuff, particularly in the commercials realm, where they're always looking for new looks, that basically wasn't graded. It was just really, they tried to call it airy. They wanted it, it's an airy look. What it was basically an unlogged image that just looked completely lacking any kind of contrast or detail. What advice for a new colorist? I would say look at what's come before you. I would certainly look into the history of film and the looks that have been achieved and how those looks have been achieved. I would be get the basics down would be my advice to any aspiring colorist.